got you back into CSGO? Why?
It was always basically top of the list for Hunter Thieves. Whether or not we would exit Call of Duty, we wanted to be in Counter-Strike. It's always been a title that was very close to nature specifically. FPS games being the PC FPS that is the closest to Call of Duty, and having tried it the first time around with all the right intentions, but with all the wrong results. So it was never a question of whether we'd enter Counter-Strike. It was just a question of when, with who. One of the reasons for why I myself joined Hunter Thieves was to get Counter-Strike teams specifically. So it's been the overarching project of the latter half of 2019.
Yeah, I think similar to us, I think it was not a matter of, I think CS was always the right thing for EG. I was like, it's where we came from, it was the beginning for us. And we kind of exited right before CSGO came around, the nothing roster kind of being our last one there. And we didn't want to get in with the wrong team. We wanted to get in, and be able to represent the EG brand the way it always had been in the game. And so we've been talking to teams, for a couple, 2-3 years, I think, at various points, kind of trying to figure out if the right one was there. And, I think all three of us are really all obviously in the market around the same time this time. And I think maybe there's a sense that there was finally enough talent out there to build some winners. And
no, for us, we only jumped on CSGO because EG was coming on CSGO. So we could have this OG EG. Yeah, like you said, it felt natural for us, for OG being on Dota to jump on another hardcore game, esports game. And if you pick one game you need to invest in to go, if you're not on CSGO, of course, it's top of the list. So we had, to prepare things, to think about how we could enter the scene. But it was pretty obvious for Seb, for Johan, and for myself to just, we were ready, let's go.
Well, I think we as an org stand out from the two of you in the sense that you've historically been, you're a predominantly Dota organization, and much of the recent success of Evil Geniuses has been Dota-based, whereas we come from a very different background, never having had a Dota team. We have an LCS team, obviously a very successful Call of Duty, both in terms of our CEO, but definitely also the team that we've had throughout 2019 that won us championships, right? So it's interesting to see the different approaches that organizations have, regardless of their storied past. That everyone is aligned. That Counter-Strike is the space that anyone and everyone should want to be in.
And on the fan side, we run questions to our fans, like, what do you feel about joining CSGO? And the answer were massively, of course, yes, go, run, we're in. And when we, the noise went out that we are going to invest in CSGO and that we are preparing things, we got a lot of messages from fans and players, Seb and Johan, like, when are you going to announce? Great, it's crazy, it's cool, go. So yeah, we just said, okay, let's go.
Yeah, I think we didn't even have to ask the community. my Reddit messages every 3 or 4 weeks, whenever there was a new team breaking up or forming, there's always at my my Reddit name, are you guys picking up? Always somebody out there trying to figure out hoping for those storylines. And I think for all three of us, I feel like we all have really strong communities behind our teams that were excited for us to get back into a space that I think the whole esports community really rallies behind. I feel like CS is it's a huge passion for so many. Obviously, it's among the biggest games, but I think it's probably it's maybe one of the broadest bases of people who just people just get CS and just enjoy it. And for all of our players, I think the most requested game to be in is CS in many ways, just because people they all have some relation to it over the years.
And it's funny also because when we started to work on the process of entering CSGO, there was Astralis winning the last major, and we just won the TI, the second TI. And we saw some Twitter posts only OG can beat Astralis, so move on CSGO. which is nice to hear, but puts a lot of pressure on our shoulders, even if we want to be cool about it, and we have a lot to learn from the space, right? Because we're new on CS:GO.
So you started the process in around September?
Yeah, we thought about it, early this year.
Yeah.
But really became serious after the TI because we had also some time to think about the next steps, and it took us like 3 or 4 months to build everything because it's a huge investment, of course. So yes.
It's a very curious process because it differs a lot from team to team, right? So for us, it's been a part of the planning for forever, basically. As long as the organization have existed, Counter-Strike has been a goal to be in. And with OG, it's different, right? Because it's been an organization that historically has been only Dota, based almost exclusively around No-Tail and whichever teammates he had. I wanted to name more, but obviously there's only one common denominator throughout everything. And for Evil Geniuses, it came as a surprise for a lot of people in the broader scope of the community that you guys suddenly entered again in the manner you did. And whereas for complexity, I talked with Jason earlier, everyone always knew that, complexity is going to be in Counter-Strike because that's basically what Jason feels passionate and strongly about, and that's their title to be in. So it's from very different backgrounds. We also know of other teams now entering Counter-Strike space. It's just interesting to see how everyone have different backgrounds, different motivations, different timelines.
But I think it's mainly because OG is still, self-funded. I mean, we haven't raised money, we haven't outside investors. So partners are paying the owners of the team. So yes, we want to go on CS:GO. Every serious esports organization, from my perspective, need to be on CS:GO. It's the king of the game, right? So, but then, can you move into the CS:GO scene? And if OG is moving on the CS:GO scene, is to be top tier team. We need to have the right players. We need to have infrastructure around the players. So it's a huge investment for us. So that's why, of course, you can say, I want to be on CS:GO, but then it's a different matter to be able to do it properly.
Yeah, I think in this free agency period, picking up teams, obviously 100 Thieves and EG, we both ended up acquiring teams, but we were in that same conversation as you, right? You and I, we all talked to the different free agent groups and things like that. You actually went with one and built around, Alexi B and that group.
Yeah.
What was that like for you guys? Kind of your first foray into buyouts and all these different teams and player groups of free agents trying to make different rosters. How did you guys get to where you are?
Yeah, to be honest, we were, kind of surprised of how things are working into the CS:GO scene, right? We discovered a lot of things, but what Seb and Yoad did, they had in mind is to create a team on CS:GO that could match what they did on Dota 2. So that's why, we were
has a lot of similarities.
Yes, we were willing to enter the CS:GO scene, but not at any cost, and not, just to enter. We need to find the right players, meaning Seb and Yoad wanted to have the players that fit with them and fit with the values of OG and how we want to do things. And to be honest, because I was not involved in this process, I'm not choosing the player, I'm not, and this is Seb and Yoad's job, and it took some time. And then you have to negotiate the buyout, to the contract, everything, basically. But players were willing to come to play with us and for us, so which is a good news and a good start if you want to recruit players, I guess. So it was bumpy, interesting, and it took some time. But then we have the team, so we'll see.
It's also very interesting the different. So we have very different lineups, right? So you have a predominantly North American lineup with a Bulgarian that is US based.
Honorary American.
Honorary American. I have a predominantly Australian lineup with a Norwegian and a Serbian and a Kiwi. And you have a multinational European lineup, mostly.
Yeah, which is interesting because usually in CSGO you see national teams, I mean same nationality speaking their own language. And you had this also in Dota for a long time. And Seb and Johan do not believe in that kind of team, one nationality. So they said that...
It's a very Dota-centric mindset.
Yeah.
I personally agree with it, but in Counter-Strike, it's very apparent that a lot of, especially the old school players, seem to firmly believe that having the same nationality is the key to ultimate success. There's a lot of teams that could justify that kind of thinking, whether it's Astralis, Fnatic, MiBR, some of the French, and the French teams like the Envious of 2015. So obviously, there's a lot of reasons for why that could hold true, but at the same time, it's also the first time for a lot of your players playing in an international team. I think Isa
this is the only Isa is used to speak, play in English, which is not his native language.
Yeah.
But the other one, Alexi B, Finnish with Ants, Valde Danish with North, NBK French, and Montu, it was either in German or English. So,
and they retain, like they live in their respective country and practice online.
Yeah.
So that's also a huge differentiator.
And we're gonna have a training facility, a new training facility in which they can play, train before the big tournaments. So seems to be working well. Probably would take some time to adjust, to be able to perfectly communicate in English, but we'll see. And honestly, I don't see it as an issue or a problem. Maybe it will be. We'll see. But it seems to be.
If your team succeeds, I think then it probably changes everyone else's mindset. I think when we were talking to free agents, that was one of our biggest struggles because we were talking about trying to put together these rosters, and you're trying to get the best roster you can. So again, coming from Dota,
you're trying to put us more pressure.
Yeah.
But you're both applying the same kind of mindset that you apply to each your respective Dota teams, but to your Counter-Strike team.
Yeah.
Because OG is doing things one way with their Dota team, and you do it differently. And now you mimic that kind of approach to your Counter-Strike team.
Well, tried to. And it was a struggle, You go out, you talk to a couple of Swedes, you talk to a couple of Danes, and you're like, hey, can we put something together with maybe one American? And they're like, you get all this resistance. They want to do it all with one region. And then you're like, well, 5 players from this one region, my 4th and 5th best player are quite down the ladder from what I could have if I had individual parts from different countries. And so, at least for me, I root for you guys to be successful because I think it makes our jobs easier down the line when you're, roster constructing and you're hoping that people will be willing to play across different nationality lines because that's, I think, it's a big success point in CS right now. Single nationality teams, win so much, or single language speaking teams like win so much. But if it breaks away, that I think makes everyone's roster construction much simpler. You can just get the best players from wherever.
Yeah, in a lot of ways, it's a safety net for an organization, right? I hope that JKM isn't the exception to the rule, but rather a proof that the concept of an international roster can work with the right pieces. Because if I had to only build around an Australian player base, that makes it a lot more difficult than if I could choose freely between all the European players and American players and so forth. So it's a very interesting timeline that we're entering, and it's as Phil mentioned, we're definitely hoping that teams like OG and Complexity are going to have a lot of success in one way or another.
Less success than us.
Yeah, obviously less success than us.
In your own way.
Yeah, like you can come in 3rd and 4th, and that's cool, and I'll take 1st.
It would change from Dota, I guess.
I'll have 1st.
Yeah, well, you have to, in Counter-Strike, you got to be prepared to play more than just one tournament a year.
Yeah.
So that's the biggest change that you guys will have to go through.
Probably. But it's not the same player, so I guess it will be okay.
Yeah.
Don't think that Seb and Johan wants to play Counter-Strike competitively.
Well, you could have been mistaken, right? Your nationalities are the same, almost identical to your Dota team. There's a Finnish player, a Danish player.
Just missing an Aussie, right?
Yeah, well,
missing
they have a Jordanian player instead.
Yeah, we have a Jordanian player.
Let's swap it out, okay.
Yeah.
Like an old school OG, like a miracle.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it's very interesting.
It is a big learning process coming from one game to another. I think that's probably the question we get most. We just did an AMA on the League of Legends subreddit, and they asked, one of the questions to me was, what lessons did I take from Dota and building into League? And there's some overarching lessons, right? It's like, well, you need good players. Like that's a good lesson. Bad players don't win games.
But it's not enough.
Yeah, but it's not enough. But some of the rules in different games are different. I think
League is very different to Counter-Strike and Dota.
Yeah.
Like Dota and League has a very player-driven, player-centric approach to how the team is built, where basically the team yields all the power of what the roster will look like in a lot of ways. And I think complexity is an outlier where Jason Lake in a lot of ways probably went in and sort of said, well, this is what the roster is going to look like. This is the availability of talent that is, and this is how it's going to end up looking. Whereas in League of Legends, the offseason very much works where a GM and their respective coaching staff basically sit down, work out what kind of lineup they're going for, and much like a lot of American sports, and then the players are just informed after the fact, right? In some cases, players will be taken into consideration, their opinions will be heard, but in a lot of ways, League of Legends is basically built around the front office and the staff. But
still, if you want to recruit a star player, is going to ask who is going to play with.
Oh, absolutely. So, and that's definitely a balance act, and I think that goes for any game, any sport, obviously, because there are players that are mindful of paychecks, and there are players that are mindful of championships. Yeah. But League is just very, very different to Dota and Counter-Strike. Yeah. But the two shares more similarities.
Yeah, but the reason why the players, our lineup, the players that are our Counter-Strike player wanted to play for OG, it's mainly because how OG was successful on Dota, and the fact that Seb and Johan and also Suggs, the coach, are very committed to the CSGO team, and that they could learn, even if they are not young players, they could learn from the Dota 2 players, from the team, how to perform, the mindset, how to prepare, how to train. Because one of the things we were talking about, the entering the CSGO scene, coming from Dota, I can speak from Seb and Johan. They were kind of surprised the way that they train. The way they train and the way they consider the boot camps and everything. And they were like, okay, that's not how we do it. So we are going to tell you how we do things, and maybe you will train better. Maybe you could get something from us, because this is not totally how we won the TIs, but this is part of the success.
But NBK was in relation successful in his career before Seb was. No-Tail was already successful back then, whether in Han and early in Dota as well. But what do you think will assure you guys being able to pass on that kind of knowledge and that perspective? And do you foresee there being a conflict in them even accepting that kind of? So I can see them,
I understand, but I don't think, because as I told before, we spent it took us 3 months or 2 months to build the team. And the 2 months was discussing with the players about the project and what we wanted to do and how we wanted to do. And basically, I was not involved in this discussion. It was a sports discussion with, Seb and Johan, explaining what they want to do and how they want to do. So to answer your question, everything was said before joining the organization.
Yeah.
And that's why they joined OG for that. It was part of the plan. It doesn't mean that it's going to success, of course. It doesn't mean that there will be some, bumpy times, but at least they know, every players know, and we know what we want to do.
Yeah. Are Seb and Johan going to continue playing Dota?
Of course.
I think that
Phllip is disappointed. I think Phllip is disappointed.
Yeah, well, they sound like very successful business people. Perhaps they should move to the back office. We could all agree. They've already won in one field.
Or maybe they could join EG, right? I think
no
some
openings.
of our players did already. So.
Johan and Tal? What a
know,
curious duo.
we never say no. In EG, there's always a possibility. So knock on our door. But I think it's a good example though of we were talking about CS and how the influence of our different game experiences come across, and I think it's kind of you're both talking both sides of the coin really. Like one side is everything's very different, right? Every game is its own and you have to learn how to operate in each world and its ecosystem, and you kind of come from the perspective of, we have a philosophy as an organization about how we see success, and we think that translates, and we think we can teach it across games. And I think maybe I fall in the middle, or maybe it's somewhere more in the, both sides agree more in the middle of there are lessons you can take from any game over, and you hope that when you move into a new space, I think especially as a multi-game organization, that the lessons you've learned in other spaces, you can see the difference in the ecosystem of CS, and you can adapt. And hopefully, yes, your players have more control over the roster and how they want it to be formed, but at the same time, you hope that, as an organization, as a premier organization, that your players will look to you and say, can I get advice on this, right? Can you help me in this decision?
Yeah, for example, you jumped into two new games, major new games, League of Legends and Counter-Strike. So is the staff, the original staff of, on the Dota 2 team involved somehow in the management? Yeah, I mean,
that's
in the
me.
management. Yeah, in the management. And so what do you do?
Yeah,
because I can tell you, that, Johan, for example, is in Los Angeles for the CS Summit right now with the team. Mm-hmm. He was in the boot camp, with the coach, the Dota 2 coach, to explain some stuff. So, but on your side, how is it,
Yeah, I've spent a lot of time in an airplane over the last few months after moving into both teams, because I am that connective tissue, the person who helped to build our Dota, our Rocket League, our Call of Duty team that won champs. We've been in a lot of spaces, and I've been the person connected to all of that. We have our GM Ryan Towie as well, who's been focused in primarily Call of Duty or Halo, and our staff that knows kind of the broad base. I trust them in our spaces that we're already in to help continue our philosophies and make sure that teams are preparing well. But yeah, I'm the one who, when we're in a new space, I need to go spend time with each of the teams and make sure that those groups learn and understand our philosophy about how we build, how we succeed, and try and carry it across. But I think that's kind of the challenge of any group as it grows, right? Is how do you hire well and teach people your philosophy and bring folks in who understand and bring them in. For CS, one of our biggest lessons, our team, very prominently has played 24 LANs this year, or will have played 24 LANs. And I think a big talking point we had with them was a lesson we learned from Dota, which was, our Dota division had demand from all these tournaments to play. We had all these invites, and there was a year where we accepted them all, and we played 19 tournaments, and our guys just about died just from the travel. Yeah. And so, talking to the CS guys about how limiting their schedule, balancing their lives better can improve their performance, and also, make sure that if you do less can be more, right? You can play in less tournaments, perform better, and make more money as a result overall, and live a better life.
Yeah, and by the way, that was one of the reasons that we were so willing to go with Blast, is that yes, there is this schedule. We are going to be able to plan, limited numbers of tournaments, and to give more day offs to players, either to train more or to get some rest, like we do on the Dota 2 space. Yeah. I guess. I don't know what you think about it, but
there's also different situations where Phil and I both got existing rosters, whereas OG picks up a fully new team, right, with different backgrounds, different nationalities, and everything. And in a lot of ways, both the teams that we picked up they were hugely successful already, forcing a new philosophy on their way of approaching the game, whether practice-wise or thinking, may not be the best suitable strategy moving forward, right? Because they're already doing well. They're both on upwards trajectories. They're both, e.g., going straight into winning ESL 1 New York. Is Phil then going to come in right after that and tell them, hey, by the way, this is how we practice? That's probably not the best approach. Whereas, but you did. You asserted yourself.
That's the way to really alpha.
True silverback gorilla right there. And so for you guys, you get a lot of guys with different backgrounds and different learnings, and clearly with a lot of respect for what Johan and Sebastian built for good reason. Obviously, the the most successful, best earning esports players of all time, with both of them two of the best mindsets I've ever seen in any one player. And granted, I'm biased from my Dota background, but obviously they're very successful and they know a lot of great stuff. So for them to really assess and explain themselves to players, and for the players to listen and respect that, is different to management people that Phil has never played competitively, and most people can't even remember that I have. So for players to suddenly take our learnings is much different, right? So all the teams in Blast are different in that regard. It's different backgrounds and everything. It was another point of that's going to be interesting moving forward. But I certainly wouldn't want to tell my Counter-Strike guys how to practice with what they've achieved, and I'm sure Phil feels the same way.
No, definitely. But I think it is, as we talk about what we do influence and how we do bring, I think you talking about joining Blast and why is like a really important part of the conversation. Like I said, our team was oversaturated. Like we had to sit down and look at this whole ecosystem and say like which tournaments matter the most, which ones are going to be the things that fans care about, the things that players care about long term. And I think choosing Blast among the other things that our teams may participate in is like a big decision, and something that I think all of us help to weigh in with our players and try to really figure out like where is the best place to be, how can we be most successful. And that's the kind of like, at the very least, if we can't tell them how to practice, hopefully how to, use their time wisely in places where they'll, get the most opportunity for success is the best we can do at the very least for them.